Hi, my name is Dr. Eric Millard, and I'm the trumpet professor at UNC Charlotte. I want to talk to you today about this year's NCMEA All-State Etude for grades 11 and 12, which is the Prelude et Ballade by Guillame Balay. One of the main challenges of this piece is that there's quite a lot of technical difficulties, and yet the piece really demands a lot of musicality and expression as well. So, as you work, try to balance both of those. The music serves the technique, and the technique serves the music simultaneously. One tendency we have as trumpet players is when we see fast notes, we tend to compress those rhythms. So as you're working through the 16ths and sextuplets and some of these faster licks like the 10-tuplet at the beginning, make sure that you're not rushing or compressing. Work with a metronome and start slowly trying to build the coordination and the timing of all of it, and then gradually build up your tempo from there. One thing I like to do when I'm practicing longer licks of fast notes like the octuplet or the 10-tuplet or even the cadenza section, all on this first page of this solo, is to break it into chunks. Through chunking this way, we give ourselves a higher chance for success in those smaller fragments, and then we can repeat those over and over until we feel comfortable enough to start to put those chunks together and build the entire lick. So it'll sound kind of like this. So you can see with both of those, breaking them down into smaller chunks made it a little bit more manageable for me as I'm kind of working through them. With the 10-tuplet, I broke it into the first 3 notes, the second 3 notes, and the last 4. And then the octuplet, I broke into 2 groups of 4. So you can kind of see how I went through that process of breaking down each of those longer licks into smaller pieces, working on them a few times, building up the tempo, and gradually putting them all together. Now I've practiced this piece now a little bit, so I've already feel pretty comfortable, but as you're working through this process, spend more time in the sections where you're working slowly and on precision. Building that muscle memory and the coordination in the fingers is going to be really important as you start to try to go faster and put the licks together. One of the challenges in playing a technically demanding piece like this is to try and be as musical as possible. A lot of times we just focus on note accuracy and rhythm accuracy, and we forget that even in a technical piece, we still really want to hear music. So be sure that you're overdoing your phrases, have some sort of motion at all times in the music, and that there's always some sort of direction or destination that your musical phrases are leading towards. Be sure where it says plus mouvements, that you have a little bit of a faster tempo, and then it starts to accelerate where it's marked just a few measures later. So that should all kind of build an intensity up until you kind of relax into the cadenza. When you get to the cadenza, know that you have some freedom in the tempo and the way you're moving through those licks. It doesn't have to be super fast the entire time, even though you see lots of beams over the notes. You can kind of ease your way into the tempo, and try to make the licks sort of a little bit of a flourish, but we still need to be accurate and precise and hear every single note. When you're working on the cadenza, know that the cadenza has a lot of freedom in tempo and time. Even though the notes are notated as all very fast rhythms, you can have some push and pull, and I would recommend taking your time in terms of the technical accuracy. Make sure we hear all the notes and that there's precision in your finger technique, and don't go faster than it's going to feel like it's in control. The important part is that there's some momentum that you build into the top G so you have a really nice arrival as you come out of the cadenza. As always, dynamic contrast is really going to help highlight your musical gestures. In the sections that are marked piano, try to be as soft as possible while still playing with a good sound so that you really contrast the forte and the full sections where you really get to be broad and full. Another area of contrast is articulation. There's a lot of areas that are slurred in this piece, so as you're coming out of the slurs, when you see some of the staccatos or accent marks, make sure those are really clearly articulated. Try to avoid being pecky, but we want to make sure there's a clear stylistic difference between the slurred and the articulated passages. When you get to the second page, Notice especially the tempo range at the top. I always encourage students, play at a tempo that's going to feel in control and be clean, where you can still play a really great musical product. Don't try to play too fast just because you think it'll impress the adjudicators. They'll always enjoy listening to a better musical product that's a little more clean and refined. As you're working through these long sections of 16ths and 8th notes, note that sometimes the longer we articulate, the heavier the tongue tends to get. So try to use as little bit of the tongue in the articulation and really focus on the connection between the notes in the airstream. The more you can focus on the air and the phrasing in all of this, the smoother it will be and the lighter you'll be able to play. This will also really help your style to keep it light and buoyant. One of the other challenges of this piece is approaching some of these larger intervals, especially the ones that kind of come out of nowhere. So as you're working on the large intervals, octaves or close to an octave, be sure that you're working on trying to connect those really smoothly, doing some slurred passages, maybe doing some buzzing, really focusing on how well you can connect those two notes with the air so that when you put it in context of the whole phrase, it doesn't feel out of place. When you have longer passages of 16th notes, such as most of the second page, be sure that all of those are still part of a phrase. You have some dynamic markings that are indicating some forward motion, like the crescendos throughout this page, but just be sure that there's always some sort of direction in your phrase, some sort of motion, that the 16ths aren't just kind of sitting there flat, but that you're making it part of a musical phrase in general. This piece is a really fun one to play. There's lots of really great opportunities to be musically expressive and to kind of be a little bit dramatic in some spots as well. So try to take advantage of those, have fun making the music, and just try to play with a beautiful sound always. If you can do those things, you're probably going to enjoy working this piece up, and you're probably going to play a really strong audition that you're going to be proud of. So good luck. I hope your preparations go well, and I hope you have a fantastic audition.